Hi guys, Scott here. I wanted to give a quick intro about today's episode. It's an interview with a company called Fifth Quadrant, who have done some research around Australian SME adoption of AI. And I thought that would be interesting to look at and to talk about. But I was a little worried it might be a little bit dry. Fortunately, Steve, who's representing Fifth Quadrant, he was a fantastic guest. He's really passionate about AI and he talks about his own experience of how they've adopted and started using AI in their research business, but also gives a lot of real life examples of other businesses that are using AI, some of the obstacles Australian SMEs are facing, and some really practical advice on how to get over that initial fear of using AI, as well as some of the tools you may want to be using. Steve also lists a number of different businesses that do innovative stuff in the AI space, Australian businesses, including in hospitality, in healthcare, and a Sydney-based business who's developed AI voice agents that are doing qualitative research over the phone, which is a fascinating topic and perhaps a little bit worrying that your next cold call may be from an AI agent. But Steve explains how so far they're actually getting better results than humans. So that's a very interesting discussion as well. So like I say, it does cover the research, but there's actually a lot packed into this 20-minute interview with Steve. I'll put links to all of the different tools, the different companies he references in the show notes. So you don't need to be taking notes. If you need to follow up on anything, you can find that in the show notes. But I really hope you enjoy this interview with Steve. I got a lot out of it, and I hope you do too. So here we go. Hello and welcome to My Way or the AI Way. I'm Scott Davison. I'm on a mission to learn more about AI this year, and I'm particularly interested in how AI can be used by small businesses. I think that's where there's a really big opportunity for this technology. And I was reading a report recently by Fifth Quadrant about AI adoption among Australian SMEs, so small and medium enterprises. And there were some interesting trends in there that I thought would be of interest to the audience. My guest today to help us unpack that data is the director from Fifth Quadrant, Steve Nuttall. Steve, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Scott. Thanks for having me on. I'm really looking forward to having a great conversation with you today about what's going on in the world of SMEs and how they're starting to use AI and what's holding them back and all of that. So, yeah, we're looking forward to it. Thanks.
Great. Well, maybe just start with a quick overview of the research you've done. So let us know who you were talking to and how deep you went.
Yeah, look, so this is a piece of work that the National AI Centre has contracted Fifth Quadrant to undertake. And we do another piece of work for the National AI Centre about responsible artificial intelligence. And we send them our regular monthly SME tracker that we've been running since COVID. And so their kind of approach to us was, we love your SME tracker. Could we pop some questions on there every month about how SMEs are adopting AI and what they're using it for and what challenges they face and what kind of business outcomes are they looking for? So, obviously we were more than keen to help one of our clients there and devised a module of questions that we piloted around May last year. And then after a few months of piloting, we got it sort of live and kind of fully up and running from August. So today's we're into April now already this year, and so we're pretty much into now 12 months worth of tracking data. We survey 400 SMEs every month, and the insights are feeding into National AI Centre's initiatives and trying to drive AI adoption amongst SMEs. So it's a big priority for NAIC. They're part of Department of Industry now. Used to be living in CSIRO, but moved over to Department of Industry. But it means they got, kind of federal funding. Money's gone into setting up the AI Adopt Centres, the 4 AI Adopt Centres. So we take the insights from this research and we have sessions with those AI Adopt Centres and really kind of productive conversations to get their feedback and hear what they're doing and so on. So the point being is that this kind of work really kind of it's practical, it's hands-on, it's really there to help ultimately SMEs dip their toe in the water, try and see what they can learn from using AI, get over some of those hesitations. So yeah, it's a really important piece of work, and as I say, I think it's grown in importance over the last year.
Okay, and what were some of the trends and insights from the most recent study?
Yeah. So The big key insight, firstly, is just in terms of the adoption of AI by SMEs. So 2 in 5 SMEs say they're currently using AI. 1 in 10 are in the process of using AI, so more like pilots and that kind of thing. And 1 in 10 say they're going to adopt AI. That gives you, 40% of the market is in some stage of AI adoption. Another 40% say, I don't intend to adopt AI. And we can look at the reasons why. And then another 20% say, I just don't know how to use AI in my business. So each one of those, have got different kinds of challenges. Those that are kind of just starting to get into the water and see what it's all about, kind of need help to making sure that they're choosing and using the right kind of tools, getting the best results from AI and so on. And then, obviously, clearly those that are saying we don't intend to adopt, what's really holding them back? What are their concerns? And for your 1 in 5 SMEs who don't know how to use AI, there's a big education opportunity there as well.
That's interesting. The 40% who have no intention of using AI at this stage, what are they saying? And is that particular industries or is it across the board?
Yep. Tell you where it does really split. It's the difference between a small versus a medium-sized business. So a small business is defined as small and micro businesses are 1 to 19, businesses with 1 to 19 employees, and medium starts at 20 employees and goes up to 499 employees. So even within our sample, there's a wide spectrum in terms of the size of that business. And as you'd expect, the smaller the business, the less likely they are to consider adopting AI. So, there's a bunch of, barriers around that. The barriers being, look, it's just moving so fast. I can't keep up with it. And it's just all overwhelming. And every time I'm just hearing something about it. And I'm just getting on with I'm trying to run my business, right? I've only got a small number of staff and I just don't have the headspace for doing that. And that's very much a small business person's issue, right? The other is a lack of skill. So they just, they don't have the internal capability either themselves or within their team, and they're struggling to compete to hire people who've got that talent, who are tending to gravitate more to the organizations that are already embracing AI. Because as an employee, that's what you would do. I want to work in the organizations that are doing cool, sexy things with AI. And if I go to a business owner that's a bit more stuck in his ways or her ways, that's, not going to attract the staff. So it compounds the problem. And then the other problem is just lack of funding. They think that, there are costs involved in doing that. If you want to use a Gen AI assistant, you can get access some of that for free to learn to begin with how to use it. Moving on to paid plans, it's $30 a month and you can go north of that. So they think that there are financial barriers, but maybe they're more perceptual than real because they've not really gone there. So I think those are the main, the main barriers that are stopping those SMEs adopting it. Some of them just don't think it's right for them either. They just think, I don't see how I can use it. But that's more the 1 in 5 who kind of just say, I'm not really aware of how to use it. Than those I've kind of thought about it and I've reached the core, I'm not using that.
Yeah. Yeah, it doesn't surprise me. Like that's what I'm saying with small businesses, particularly owner-run businesses. They've got long to-do lists. They're deep, in the business every day. They don't tend to have the time. They don't perceive to have the time or the ability to step out of the business and learn a new technology. Whereas I guess bigger businesses, you can have other people within it. But of course, the flip side of that is I actually think it's these really small businesses where there's the biggest opportunity because AI gives them the opportunity to effectively double or triple their team by using AI. They've suddenly got these additional resources.
And I'd love to kind of talk more a bit about the different ways in which they can use AI because I think it's just exciting. And we've been using AI for probably 4 years in the business in various guises, and maybe we get an opportunity to learn more about Fifth Quadrant's use of AI. But we fit in the small business end with about 15 staff, right? And as you say, having AI is like having another member of your team, or it's just freeing up team members to do the kind of away from the dull stuff to do the interesting and exciting stuff or work other things. But we're in the knowledge services business, right? So we we'll go out of business if we do not embrace AI and go all in on AI. My business would not be running by the end of this year. I guarantee you that we'd be out of business. So we have to embrace it. My staff have to embrace it as well. And I think that's another factor that sometimes you might have an owner who's quite keen to take on AI, but their staff are going, whoa, hang on a minute, it's just going to replace me. I'm not going to get the more sort of Luddite mentality. And I'm not going to help this guy, automate all these processes and find the bot to do my job. So that's another resistance that we do find in the research as well, that there's a difference. Those who are starting to adopt AI, staff are on board. Those who are not, they've got resistance.
Resistance from the start. I'm interested in your case study, to be honest. So just tell us a little bit about Fifth Quadrant and how you're approaching this need to adopt AI.
Look, I think the first kind of use case ultimately for us is just around areas of automation. So, we conduct market research, we conduct large scale surveys, we conduct qualitative research. And so that means, for example, when you're capturing open-ended user feedback on a survey, for example, and you might have 2,000 open-ended responses. Look, back in the day, human beings would go through that, create up a code frame and just allocate statements into different codes. We've been using AI for that now for 2 or 3 years to manage that process, to do that, automation of open-ended response coding. So kind of use that as an example. But I think, and obviously we've been using generative AI within the business to help us conduct pieces of desktop research, to help us write surveys, write questionnaires, increasingly to be able to creatively analyze data, or to give us ideas and thoughts and suggestions as to how we might approach things. In terms of analytic frameworks, AI is really good at kind of helping you pick the right framework to be able to solve a business problem. So huge opportunity, I think, in terms of the role of generative AI in our business. And then more recently, we've started to explore the role of developing using voice agents to conduct research. Either that could be quantitative research or qualitative research. So we've been working with a really interesting company based in Sydney called CALLD.ai, CALLD.ai. So they've been disrupting the contact center industry, building really smart agents. And I spoke to one of the founders there to look at how they could help us develop agents there as well. I don't want to say too much about that because we're still very much at a developmental stage there, and we haven't yet got product out there, but we are testing that. And I think that's a really kind of exciting space to go into. There's some really interesting companies that are developing other productivity agents and workflow management agents. Our model is to kind of review the best of breed in different areas and then to bring that into the business. We don't build our own AI internally. I mean, that's not our skill set. I go to the organizations who are really good and then can customize something for us. So if you look at a good example of those productivity and workflow management AIs, it would be a company called Toothfairy.ai. They're based in Melbourne. They're doing some really cool stuff there to help organizations really kind of automate and manage those workflows efficiently. You can plug that AI, ultimately into your own systems and give them instructions, train them up and get into to do pieces for you. So, they've got an analyst AI, the agent that could, potentially do some of the data reporting stuff that we do, particularly the more automated stuff. And I think like everybody does, you start looking at Copilot and you're weighing Copilot up. And then it's always about trying something new. We just have to have this culture of, finding the latest new product and testing that out. I just signed up for one called Perplexity this morning, and I was just doing a piece of desk research to prep for a meeting with a client earlier. It was brilliant. It just picked out everything that I needed to prepare for that meeting. So saves us a huge amount of time. Sorry, it was quite a long answer because you can see I get quite excited about these things and the way we're using it in the business.
I love the way you're embracing it because that's the way to go about it. And Perplexity is a tool I've been using as well. And it is a fantastic research tool. And like you say, not only does it save you time preparing for a meeting, but the actual result of what you're getting to take to that meeting is, in my case, far superior to what I would have got previously spending hours on Google. It doesn't just cut the time down, it does a better job of it. And that's why I'm getting really excited about AI. it's not so much the ability to do things faster, which of course it provides, but
Yeah.
you can do them better. And
It's the
it's an
absolutely.
incredible time, because there's this old adage that's always been used in business, particularly in tech businesses. Yeah, you can do it faster, better, or cheaper, but you can
Yeah.
pick two of those,
Yeah. That's
not
right.
not all three. But there's many cases now with AI where you're doing it faster, better, and cheaper, and for that
100%.
reason, it's an opportunity, but it's very disruptive.
So CALLD.ai, for example, use them as an example. So they're voice agents. They're better than human beings because they don't wake up in the morning with a hangover because they've been on the lash the night before. They consistently interact in the same way with whoever they're interacting with, whether it's customers or they're doing surveys. They're doing polling work on behalf of government at the moment, on behalf of government. They're doing polling work for the federal election on behalf of a polling agency. And what they're able to get is really in-depth qualitative insight at scale, because they can ask these open-ended questions and they're really good at probing and just finding out, more about what's driving people's decisions to vote, what about their voting preferences. And the other good things they're really smart at is that, when people ring you up to do a survey, you go, mate, I've got the time. They have gone through all of the kind of objections that people can raise, including the F off objection. And so they've trained it up to be able to go, everyone says that, look, I'm an AI, it goes, but hey, how would you like to be able to tell your grandkids that you were one of the very first people to take part in an AI survey? And people go, yeah, that's pretty cool. And so they go, yeah, right, I'll do the survey. And, so humans can't do that. Humans, I mean, that unique selling point's got a shelf life. I get it. But
No, I love that, because it's like you best trained salesperson with all the possible objections, but they won't take anything personal, and they'll just make call after call after call. Are the people responding in those scenarios, are they declaring it's an AI agent, or would those people assume they're talking to a human?
no, they're clear and upfront. You have to be, I think that transparency when you're using AI to interact with customers, the voice agents, you've got to be transparent around that the full disclosure. People, once they get into the conversation, I mean, I'm assuming you're real, Scott. You're not
Well, you never know, do you?
the, the, people really get into it. Have you listened to the podcast Shell Game? Oh, definitely. Go and look up Shell Game afterwards, right? And this is all about this journalist in the US and his journey towards it. And he's got all of the tech that you need to build a voice agent. He builds his own voice agent and he trials it out. It's a whirlwind of a podcast. I definitely recommend listening to it. I think it's 6 episodes, but he's winning awards for it as well. So it's a good, it's a good pod. But it was immediately after I listened to that podcast series that I met the people from CALLD.ai just by serendipity. So I think what that's telling us is that, AI is moving very rapidly in that direction. And the advances that every company that I'm talking to, the advances that they are making are huge. We can't keep pace as human beings with the exponential improvements and change that is driven by technology. We never have been able to think. We just think linear as human beings. We don't do doubling. Once you start doubling very big numbers, things start happening really quickly. And so coming back to our conversation about SMEs, I think that whole pace of change is just happening too quick. I don't know when to jump on. We get excited about it, but I can see a lot of people are just very scared by it as well.
Yep. Yeah, it is scary for a lot. So for those ones who are in that bucket, who are a bit hesitant or scared, what would your advice be to them?
Nothing in your life is ever as scary as it actually might seem once you cross the line. Fear is fear. Human fear is human fear. It doesn't matter, whether it's the guard dug up a driveway. Well, that might bite you actually. But it's how you overcome any fear. When you've had fears in your life, what tools did you use to overcome that fear? And how did you feel afterwards when you finally dealt with that? That could be jumping into an ice cold pool, but just deal with the fear factor. I think it's no different to any other fear you've encountered in your life.
Okay. And once they get over that mindset hurdle, where's a good place typically to start? What sort of tools, what sort of tasks would you encourage people to start with?
Look, to some extent, that does sort of depend a little bit around the industry sector that you're in and you're talking about a business, right? A business decision maker here. So, I think that, you've got to kind of think about what I would actually start from what outcome do I really want from this tool? Right? And I think I would not call it a tool because it's more of an agent than it is a tool. But what's the outcome that I want, right? Do I want to make decisions faster? Is it a need for greater security around my technology? Do I want to uplift the experience that my customers have when dealing with me in my organization? Do I want more productivity? Do I want to improve my marketing? Do I want to do some better forecasting around sales? So I'd be kind of like doing a little bit of a jobs to be done thing around my business and looking at kind of where are the biggest problems that I need to solve, and how's that going to make me feel? So there's functional benefits there. How's it going to make me feel by getting that solved? And how am I going to kind of look by getting that solved? So you get 3 tiers of benefits: functional, emotional, and a social benefit. And I think if you can think around those outcomes and those benefits, so it's faster decision making, great. So where do I start with that? I want AI that's going to help me with anything around data entry and documentation management and so on. That might be what I'm doing. Maybe I've got issues around my supply chain, for example. So there's some brilliant AI tools to help organizations manage supply chain. If you're a retail business, we can start using AI for menu creation. And there's some wonderful tools. If I'm a healthcare organization, I'm a GP running a small GP practice, there's AI now to help you with all of your patient notes. And it's all done securely and safely and so on. So my view, start with the business outcomes that you want, work backwards from there, and then you'll find the tool that's going to give you the solution.
Yeah, that's great advice, Steve. Thank you. And you've mentioned a few case studies along the way, or businesses that are doing cool stuff in AI. Are there any others that stand out in the SME space within Australia of useful case studies that others could learn from?
Sure. I mean, there are lots of good examples of startups in the AI space that can help small businesses. So there's a company called Splose, SPLOSE, and they do AI enhanced practice management for allied health professionals. They automate appointment scheduling, billing, patient records. They can help clinicians complete notes and reports. So that's a really example in the healthcare space. I came across a really kind of cool company in the hospitality management space called Restoke AI, Restoke. And so they do restaurant process automation, powered food recipe costing. They do inventory tracking. Inventory tracking is really critical in that food and hospitality space. Their software integrates with your point of sale, integrates with your. Sounding like I'm doing a sales job for them, but the integration point is really important. Right? You don't want to have anything to stand on. Everything has to integrate these days. Getting out into regional Australia in the mining space, there's an Adelaide-based company called MaxMine that they've got a data platform for mining efficiency and sustainability. So they're a really interesting company. There's just a few examples, right? And I think that there'll always be new entrants. Look, some of these companies might have a relatively low, shelf life, but survival rate.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of innovation happening, and I think people think that all the innovation is happening overseas. I think Australia's got a really strong innovation story to tell around AI. I know my client Nate will love me for saying that because that's what they like to say. But they are doing a good job and they're promoting it. I think the other thing, that your audience really should be looking at is the work of the AI Adopt Centres. So, just simply Google NAIC, AI Adopt Centres. There are 4 Adopt Centres doing different kinds of work. But they're federally funded to take forward various initiatives. People who want to get off the ground and just do some free education courses. TAFE New South Wales has got funding to do free AI getting started courses. Look up, if you're in New South Wales, look up TAFE New South Wales. It's free, find time. I don't know if it's any good or not. Jump in there. And then, you can get lost down for, you can have a whole weekend spent on YouTube looking at stuff.
Yeah, no, that's great. There's some resources available for Australian SMEs, and as you say, there's plenty of innovation happening in Australia. Restoke is one in particular that I'd looked into. They're doing some great stuff. It's really cool, Steve. This has been a great conversation. I love that we started on data, but we really focused a lot of practical examples and practical suggestions that that small businesses are going to be able to use. So thank you so much for your time. Have you got any final thoughts you want to share with Australian small business owners?
Look, it's an exciting world out there. Once you cross the threshold, really, honestly, don't get left behind, because the businesses that will not succeed will be the ones that they don't lose out to AI. They lose out to competitors that are using AI. And that's one of the key stats coming out of our research report. And actually, because I want to make sure I quote this exactly correctly. So I'm just going to pull up on my screen the stat that's going to be really important here. So one of the statements that we asked in the survey, the question was, to what extent do you agree or disagree with the following statements relating to AI? One of those statements, there's a whole battery of statements. One of those statements was, AI solutions will provide my business with a competitive edge. So the businesses that are not aware of AI, only 14% agree with that statement. The businesses that are not adopting AI, so I don't want anything to do with it, 10% of them agree with that statement. But the businesses that are on that journey to AI adoption, 56% of them agree with that statement, right? That is a huge gap, because they're using it, or they're about to use it, and they can see how it's going to give them that competitive edge. So to my point, if you want to stay in business, get involved, start using it. You're going to be finding it difficult to compete with other businesses in your sector who are using AI, because they're going to be the winners. Or no, that's not fair to say. They've got a better chance of winning, but it's not about AI knocking your business
The thing
out.
I love about that is that's just a mindset shift, really, from viewing it as a threat to viewing it as a competitive advantage or an opportunity. Change your mind set, and you change your behaviour accordingly. So that's great advice. Thanks, Steve.
100%.
I'm going to put links to some of those resources you've mentioned. I'll put them in the show notes, including those support centres. I'll put that under there, and I'll also include a link to the research if anyone wants to go and find out more about that. But Steve, thanks so much for coming on the show.
Scott, it's been a really good pleasure. It's a pleasure. I'd love to come back on again in the future. It was a great conversation. Thank you.
Great. We'll get you back for sure for the next report. So I hope you enjoyed that conversation with Steve from Fifth Quadrant. Some really useful tips in there for everyone. As I say, all the information will be in the show notes if you want to go and delve deeper on any of that or get some support. And once again, thanks for joining me on this journey to learn more about AI. I'm Scott Davison, and this is My Way or the AI Way.